A civil rights marker will be unveiled at two historic sites in New Bern this weekend. Oscar's Mortuary is one of them. It's where the KKK bombed two cars on January 24th, 1965. Victor Dove and his brother Julian Dove are here with me today. Your grandfather, Oscar Dove, founded the mortuary. Now he's being honored posthumously for his civil rights activism. Now, I know you weren't born yet
No,
when your
ma'am.
grandfather passed away and did all these good deeds. You were 3 when he passed.
Yes, ma'am.
How does it feel knowing he was so courageous? What stories have you heard?
Oh, wow. It feels amazing to know that you have a grandfather that was so impactful in the community during that time. The stories range from 0 to 100 when it comes to him. But during that time of the civil rights unrest in our local area, just to know that someone in our family's bloodline was significant in making sure that those that were out there protesting had means to come back and hit the streets and get back into the fight due to the efforts of my grandfather, which was led by Leon Buckshot Nixon, who was one of the leaders and during those times. It's just very significant to me to have such a powerful structure to look up to.
And we're seeing modern day video and also yesteryear photos of Oscar's mortuary. It is a staple in the Pembroke community. Julian, this is a business, but in the black community, it doubles as more than that. So explain to us how the mortuary served as a place for civil unrest where people could come together and plan their next move.
Well, what it meant was the funeral home has always been a crucial part of the black community where you can just come there and talk with the owners, find out family records. But back then at that time, what it meant was it was a safe place where we can all get together, whether you had to act as you were handling business to really have a meeting about what was going to be the next move in the civil rights movement.
And so your grandfather, being a brave man as he was, allowing people to meet at his place of business. And then we get to January 1965. What have you heard about what happened that day, Victor?
During that time, we do know that the Ku Klux Klan had placed a cross on our property. They burnt the cross on the property, and they also bombed the back of the funeral home, which the pictures just show where the damage was taking place. Luckily, the bomb did not ignite to the level that they expected it to, so it did not cause the damage that it was intended to. You know, God did have our back during that time, as he always has had up until today. But the stories are very luminous in this situation, and they've carried throughout our entire lives. You know, there are older people in this community, because when you really think about it, I'm 51. My generation is the first generation that was really born with the full gamut of rights. You know, when we speak about my aunts that are still here and many others, they did not fully have the rights, equal rights under the protection of the law that all Americans were due. So it's very
And it's in your family
definitely.
because one of your aunts also took part in the lunch counter sit-ins. So we're
Dorothy
seeing,
Dove.
Dorothy Dove, yes.
yeah, we're seeing where this is a part of your family. And what happened with Dot?
Well, what happened with Aunt Dot, she and a brave group of her friends went downtown to the A&W counter, and they refused to leave. Knowing that my grandfather was a business owner at that time, they used her name for Dorothy Dove versus the state, but was also her friends that were with her at that time.
And so they sat in, they refused to leave, they were arrested, and this happened over and over again.
Yes, ma'am, it did. It just shows how brave they were back then, knowing some of the things that could have possibly happened. But if you know that group of people from that generation, the 40s, they were built different, they were built tough.
Yes, and they continued until the change did come. And you know, we're talking about these car bombings at the mortuary, but that wasn't the only place that bombings took place in New Bern. Tell us about that, Victor.
Well, St. Peter's Church held meetings. It was a crucial meetings of Julius Chambers. There were other NAACP presidents that met there. It was a large meeting. So I'm assuming, because I wasn't there, but when the Ku Klux Klan were following this movement and this effort, where brave young African Americans were fighting for their equal rights, they were following them as well. So during this meeting at St. Peter's, two cars, dynamite was placed beneath two cars and they were bombed. So it was a whole period of time. In 1960, I think, started in Greensboro, this lunch kind of sit-ins. So that kind of just matriculated into the communities. In New Bern, North Carolina, I mentioned Leon Buckshot Nixon earlier. He was one of the spearheads of this movement. You have people like names you'll be familiar with, Barbara Lee. She was very active. You have Mr. and Mrs. Sampson. But so it was so many others that were active because my grandfather, along with George Dunson and men like that, had financial means to help others get out of jail. You know, they became involved. So it was a big movement, and everybody in New Bern was involved with so many other names that I don't want to keep naming and forget people, but it was so many people involved. My grandfather, my aunt, they were just pieces in this puzzle, but together, when this puzzle came together, change came, and they did their part in Eastern North Carolina to accumulate with all the other efforts across the nation that brought civil rights to us all.
Yes, so many of the other efforts are well known, Selma, Alabama, other places, and now we're getting to share with our community some of the things that happened right here in Eastern Carolina. It's wonderful to fast forward to our generation where we have these rights. We can go to schools that we want to attend. We can go to lunch counters that we would like to sit in. And we don't have those pressures, but there's still other changes that need to come. And seeing these civil rights markers be placed is part of that as well. So people never forget, they always remember and reflect on how that change came to be. So we're going to get to the markers now. The marker will be placed at both Oscar's Mortuary and St. Peter's A.M.E Zion Church. That's going to take place this weekend in New Bern.
Yes.
January the 25th,
The 25th
at the mortuary,
at the
the
mortuary.
next day at the church. How does it make you feel to know this will be commemorated in this way?
Oh, it's amazing, and especially for the African American history group that pushed for this effort to be done, because this isn't anything that my family thought of. You know, this was an effort by that group, and they put so much effort into it. You know, and they were the ones pushing this for years. So we just want to thank them as well. You know, the African American History and Culture Center for their efforts that they put forth to get this sign to become fruition.
Julian, when you see these historic photos of your grandfather, a man you never had a chance to know.
No, ma'am.
He's not going to be here to see this unveiling tomorrow. What do you think about the work he did?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I'm proud of the work that he did, but I think that he will be proud to see that the efforts that he made back then are paying off for all of us now, because he knew what he was fighting for. And when you are a person who looks towards the future and won't look at just the now, you don't mind that you won't be able to see your efforts in the future. He knows that his children, his grandchildren, and great-grandchildren can benefit from his work.
And they're living it out right now. Oscar's Mortuary, a family-owned business. How long has it been standing, Victor?
Since 1960 in the Pembroke community. My grandfather started as Gadet and Sons with his father, and then he later moved to Pembroke community in 1960, and it's been there ever since.
A lot of history there, and a lot of history running through you guys' veins as well. Final thoughts, Victor, as we close out this segment.
Well, the final thoughts is that as we do embark on this day tomorrow, on Saturday, I just always like to remember that it took in the village for this to happen. even though my grandfather's being honored, it's very important to recognize that there was so many others that took part in this, that even may have even put more effort in this, but due to the fact that this particular building was bombed, he is being recognized, and we do appreciate that. But it was so many other people that were so involved as well.
It really took a village. Thank you for sharing
Thank
your
you.
family's push with all of us. And we are grateful for the work that was done and is still being done to this
Exactly.
day. I'm Valentina Wilson in your community.